WA flight bound for the Philippines.
Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in Subic Bay. Come fly with me, let's fly away. Come fly with me, let's float down to Cebu. In Alabang there's a one-man band and he'll toot his flute for you. Come fly with me, let's take off in the blue. Once I get to Tagaytay, where the air is rarefied, we'll just glide with a semi-glide. Once I get to Boracay, I'll be holding you so near with my beer. The locals cheer because we're together. Weather-wise, it's such a lovely day. Just say the words and we'll beat those birds down to Manila Bay. It's perfect for a boodle fight with friends, they say. So come fly with me, let's fly away.
Just north of the equator and today hidden by fantastic cloud formations, the Philippines. A group of 7,107 islands with a total land area a little larger than that of Great Britain. This is a modern 20th century city, predominantly English-speaking and with a reputation of friendly hospitality. The climate is warm and generally tempered by sea breezes.
Once I get to Palawan, I'll be eating sinigang.
Magandang gabi po mga Dapper Cats. At ito po uli ang inyong Chairman Fred ngayong Huwebes ng gabi. At dito po tayo sa Barangay Family and Friends Global Pinoy Show. Okay. Ayan. Okay. At magbabalitaan po tayo ngayong gabi po ay magbabalitaan po tayo ng mga latest happenings ating paligid-ligid at sa ating pong mga kabarangay sa ibang dako ng Australia at ganun din po sa ibang dako ng mundo. Kaya samahan po ninyo ako ngayon at 6 na pong minuto lang po tayo at kaya po wag po kayong pipikit, wag po kayong kukurap ng mata, kundi meron po kayong mami-miss, ha? Okay, so ayan. Okay, so wala pong kurapan ng mata, samantala ay ito po muna, unahin natin mga balita buhat sa ating paligid-ligid, lalo na po dito sa Australia. Ha? At napakarami po ng mga developments dito sa ating paligid-ligid. Okay, unang-una na, first of the rank ay tungkol dito sa nangyari sa sa Sydney na hinarang ng mga tawag ito, either mga greenies or anti-climate change o yung mga climate change what you call this campaigners. Tinali po nila yung sarili nila upang matigil po yung mga biyahe ng mga container palabas po doon sa container terminal sa Sydney. Kaya naman po ay na-disrupt po ng mga 2 oras ang traffic doon. Okay, so hindi po masaya ang mga may kapangyarihan. Tignan po natin.
In breaking news, protesters are back at Port Botany tonight. These pictures are just in from our helicopter with 2 activists attaching themselves to 2 trucks, one chained inside and another on top. Police officers have demanded they remove themselves or be arrested. It follows more action this morning, disrupting traffic at the port and condemned by politicians.
For the second time in 2 days, access to Port Botany blocked by a lone protester.
I'm effectively stopping all trucks from exiting.
Hanging from makeshift props, streaming live to Facebook.
Australia's gonna kill us all, I reckon.
The road into the port closed, police rescue given the task of getting him down. While their backs are turned, he slips something out of a bag, dropping it into the water below. The 21-year-old then lowered onto a police boat and arrested at a nearby boat ramp, later charged with a series of offences and refused bail.
It's incredibly unsafe, and it's really unfair to put police or anyone else in a situation where they're going to go and rescue one of these people that engage in unsafe acts.
He's from a group called Blockade Australia, protesters intent on causing mass disruption in the name of climate change, blocking roads and rail lines, refusing to back down.
Blockade Australia will stop when there's a safe climate future for all of us, and we'll keep blockading Australia until we get some justice.
Fellow activist Eric Serge Herbert has been arrested 11 times, jailed but now on bail. The latest offenders are both German nationals.
I want them deported. They have no place here in New South Wales to be hosting these protests.
The government has asked for advice regarding current penalties for protesters and whether they need to be strengthened to stop repeat offenders, as some argue existing laws are just a slap on the wrist.
These galahs are stealing time and economic opportunity off people.
Calling for mandatory jail time.
There's got to be tougher laws. A 12-month mandatory jail term to send a message, it's completely unacceptable.
Taylor Aiken, 7 News.
Okay, ayan na. Nagalit na si Mark Lightham. Yan po ang leader ng One Nation ngayon. Pumalit na kay Madam Pauline. Si Mark Lightham na ngayon ang leader ng One Nation. Okay. Mas matapang yan si Mark Lightham. Patay kayong bata kayo. Okay, ito naman. Ganun din nangyari sa Sydney. So, dalawa at tatlong insidente po yan.
The acting premier is demanding 2 German brothers be deported after a fresh round of protests at Port Botany. After yesterday's mayhem at 20...
Okay, yan pala yung kasama yung dalawang magkapatid na Aleman na German na nagtatali ng sarili nila sa sa isang pole at pagkatapos para hindi po makaraan yung mga truck, yung mga container truck. Ang purpose po nila is ma-disrupt at maabala ang pag-flow ng economy ng Sydney, unang buong Australia dahil doon daw po ang nakakadagdag sa climate change. Kaya gusto nilang matigil po yung mga natin, yung mga imported goods natin from overseas. Nako, hindi lang po yun. Ang magagalit sa kanya, hindi lang pa may kapangyarihan, pati yung mga umorder po na delay yung kanilang order, magagalit sa kanila. Baka imbis na ayaw na putulin ng pulis yung mga tali, baka pag yung mga consumers na naghihintay ng order nila, baka sila na mismo pumutol doon sa tali at mahulog na sa tubig, diretso na sa tubig yung nagba-blockade na yun. At anyway, ganun din naman. Ito po ang hindi magandang balita dahil po nagtataasan po lahat ng mga bilihin natin. Sa dahilan po ito ng petrol na tumataas po ang prices ng ating mga energy, tawag dito, energy consumables, yung mga produkto, mga energy products. Of course, lahat yun. Kasama ng gasolina, petrol, diesel fuel, whatever na produkto na galing sa oil, sa crude oil. Ayan. So, kasama na rin po dyan yung mga bilihin natin sa groceries. Kaya, wag na po kayo mag-panic buying. Basta, bilhin po ninyo yung may medyo matagal maubos na mga groceries. Kagaya ng mga oatmeal, instant noodles. Wag na po kayo kaya mga dilata po yan. Ayan, okay? Ayan. Ay, mga Pilipino, mga kabarangay na Pilipino, meron lang bigas at saka ligo sardines. Sa buhay na po tayo. Kagaya ng ating ginagawa sa Pilipinas. Okay, ayan. Ganun po ka-adjustment. Ayan. Yung pong mga hindi na sanay na dilata, medyo may problema kayo dyan. Okay, ayan.
Well, as every family will know, the cost of living just keeps on going up, with some Aussies now facing a staggering grocery price hike of up to 75%. Can you believe it? For more, we're joined by Richie's IGA Chief Executive Officer, Fred Harrison from Tarrant Point in Sydney South. G'day, Fred. Nice to see you. Look, what is driving up these prices so high, and how long do you reckon it's going to go for?
Well, look, there's a number of reasons, to be honest, Carl. The main reason still is the shortage of workers. We're short of pickers. There's no backpackers in the immediate areas. So it's really quite frustrating that some of the produce is there, but we just don't have the workforce to pick it at the moment. It is starting to improve. We need more backpackers into the country.
Yeah.
That's certainly going to help. Secondly, there's the floods. No question that the floods nailed a lot of crops, particularly vegetables, up in northern New South Wales, southern Queensland. And what's also happening is a lot of stock is coming out of Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney now, up to Queensland, because if you think about it, Queensland has been wiped out. So the growers are getting a better price by sending their product to Queensland, say, than to Melbourne and Sydney. So the old business kicks in here, and if you can get a better price by sending stock to Queensland,
right,
why not? So that's making Victoria and New South Wales a bit short. And lastly is, of course, fuel prices. Prices.
Have you got supply issues as well, or has that been largely resolved? As in
no,
truck
look,
supply?
That's largely, yeah, no, there's still issues. I mean, the whole process, the whole delivery process is still running behind. We haven't really bounced back from the trouble we had back in January. I mean, there's still a lot of Omicron cases. There's people having to isolate. So it hasn't improved that dramatically. And in fact, if anything, there's been a spike in people being off work, whether it be our business or transport business. Every business is suffering.
All right, so how long, the magical question, hopefully the magical answer, how long is it going to be like this for? And you know, I mean, it's tough for families out there at the moment.
That's exactly right. Look, in fairness, I should add, it's not every item of fruit and veg that's been hit hard by price increases. For example, today we're selling avocados here at 99 cents. So there is still some produce that's relatively cheap. So maybe the consumer just needs to pick a little bit wiser and not select, you know, rock melons that might be $8 each. So I think, Carl, we're going to see this continue at least for the next 6 months, possibly through to Christmas. Again, though, not all produce. It'll be select items from time to time,
haul, isn't it?
subject to the season.
Gee, that fresh fruit looks so good behind you. Delicious stuff, Fred. And thank you so much for being with us, mate. Appreciate it.
Iyan po ang medyo problema ng karamihan sa ating mga consumers ngayon. Yung pong ibang mga produce, mga prutas po, at mga greeners na gustong-gusto natin ay maaaring may kamahalan sa ngayon. So ang payo po nung ating mga grocery association is medyo maging adaptable po tayo, maging flexible po tayo. Kung yung pong dating gusto natin ay sabi nga ni Mang Fred, kung dati gusto natin kumain ng rock melon pero $8 o $10 ang isa, kalimutan nyo na po muna kumain ng rock melon, kundi ang kainin nyo na lang po ay yung avocado. Sabi niya, kung ano yung mura, avocado, mura daw po, 99 cents. So, ibig sabihin nun, tayo mga consumers, maging adaptable din po at maging flexible. Ayan. Alright. So, yan po ang payo sa atin ng mga grocery association. Okay, at samantala ay ito naman ang balita sa WA naman po. Dito muna sa atin sa Victoria. Okay, talaga pong election feeling election na po si Premier Dan Andrews, at mukhang nagbibigay na ng hint na kung ang election dito sa Victoria. So ibig sabihin, hindi, ang election po dati sa Victoria ay nakaset na po yan sa November. Okay? So pansamantala, medyo nangangampanya na si Premier Dan. At ito nga, isa sa mga pinupuntahan niya, yung tinatawag na mga hospitals para daw po magkaroon ng ma-open na yung elective surgery. Okay, panoorin po natin.
The Premier appeared to be in campaign mode today, hinting that an announcement on elective surgery is also on the way. And while the state opposition was missing in action, Daniel Andrews was praising South Australia's new Labor leader.
It wasn't the most captive audience.
It is about health, just to be clear.
But the Premier made certain his announcement of another 10,000 TAFE positions didn't fall on deaf ears, and it's clear an election is on the horizon.
When we came to government a few years ago, TAFE was smashed. It was on its knees.
But it was a Labor victory across the border in South Australia that the Premier was taking notes on.
It's a fantastic win. He should be proud. Him and his team put a positive plan to the people of South Australia, and they have resoundingly endorsed that.
And hoping to replicate.
As well as lots of announcements we'll make in the second half of the year as we continue to add to our positive plan.
The state government has continually refused to confirm how many Victorians are waiting for elective surgery, saying they're waiting on a report. The last update in December had 80,000 names on it.
A lot of patients unable to get the care that they need, and we'll have some very positive announcements to make in that space soon as well.
And while the state opposition has been media shy this weekend, not fronting cameras once, it gave the state government free rein to spruik its mental health tax.
The other side of politics, not that we're here to talk about them, but it bears thinking about. They're going to take away that $3.8 billion on day one if they get the chance.
Last night, outgoing South Australian Premier Stephen Marshall left his concession speech powerless and carless. The Premier was able to find his today, hopes it's still there in November. Chanel Vella, 7 News.
Okay, alright. Medyo tama ito na nakangiti si Premier Dan at dahil isang kapartido niya ay nanalo sa election sa Adelaide sa South Australia. Labor government po ngayon ang nanalo sa South Australia. So ibig sabihin maganda pong pangitain 'yon na gusto ng karamihan ng Australians ay Labor government. So wala po siyang takot na pumunta sa tumawag o magpa-eleksyon sa Nobyembre. Okay, so ayan, despite ng mga protest rally na inalipos na nila o minumura-mura mo nila si Premier Dan, kung ano-ano pong mga pangalan tinawag nila kay Premier Dan, nakalipas na po yun nung that was last year dahil po sa pandemic. Balit dahil po sa ginawa ni Dan Andrews na ng kanyang gobyerno, pamahalaan ay naagapan po natin ang pamumuksa ng COVID-19 at hindi po masyadong lumala o dumami ang mga naapektuhan o ang binawian ng buhay. Dahil kung hindi po nagtigpit ng gobyerno, mas marami pa ho ang siguradong mahahawa sa COVID-19 kung hindi po tayo nag-istrikto ng lockdown. At pagka napuno po yung dumami pong nahawaan, ma-overwhelm po yung hospital system natin. Pati po yung mga frontliner natin, magkakasakit po yun. Pag na-overwhelm po, that is a recipe for disaster, sabi nga nila. Okay, yan. Okay, yun. Okay, anyway, dumako naman tayo sa WA. At ito naman, ang WA dati pinakakonti na infection rate. Subalit ngayon, sila naman po ang namumroblema at mukhang tumataas po ang cases nila sa Perth, Western Australia.
Fronting cameras for the first time this month, Chief Health Officer Andy Robertson says WA's path through Omicron hasn't strayed far from modelling.
With over 8,400 cases, we're still tracking upwards at this stage. So we're hoping that we will have a peak in the next week or so.
While the BA2 variant is now accounting for a proportion of positive cases, Dr. Robertson says it won't necessarily cause a longer Omicron wave.
We would still anticipate we will get to a peak in the next couple of weeks, and that it will drop as it has done in other jurisdictions.
The opposition is still pressing for detail on the easing of restrictions.
Surely that modelling is sufficient and adequate for us to be able to use it to determine when these restrictions need to be removed.
But Dr. Robertson had little to share about the review into restrictions currently underway.
We're continuing to revise and we'll provide that advice to government.
All right, we've really got to get into a meeting. Thanks, everyone.
We know one consideration will be COVID hospitalisations, which are rising but remain manageable. One thing keeping them that way is the COVID Care at Home program, which has seen 1,300 people provided with equipment like oximeters so they can be monitored at home. Right now, there are 670 COVID patients being managed at home by telehealth. Since it began, only 33 have later required hospitalisation.
The government's review of Level 2 restrictions is due to be finished next week, before the expected peak in COVID hospitalisations, meaning if any restrictions are eased, the decision would rest on predictions the hospital system will cope. James Carmody, ABC News.
Okay, at bago po tayo pumunta sa balita sa ibang bansa ay medyo tayo at malapit po ang magkaroon tayo mga peaceful dinner dance mangyayari sa ating barangay sa mga susunod na mga weekend punong-punong po yan mamaya po wait natin sa mga dinner dances na nakahilera po dyan unang una ito kahit pala kaya pala tayo nakatilaw po ngayon ayan dahil linggo po isang linggo po yan next yan ay okay Moreno Makoso Melbourne Land kaya po tayo ay nakikisul hindi po nakikikamping nakikikasul tayo ngayon bilang pong paalala sa ating mga aboter na malapit na po yung Isko Moreno Dumagoso Melbourne Team lunch yan, hindi launch, lunch get together sa linggo po yan, Sunday, April 3. Okay, balita po natin mga 10 lechon daw po yan ang in order ni Madam Lulu at Lulu Lorenzo yan po ang punong tawag dito punong organizer dahil niya po yan kalungsod niya si Isko Moreno hindi po kababata kalungsod po okay baka anyway ayan okay pero lang joke lang at Madam Lulu at of course si Pinoy Arlan Pajardo at si ating maestro Bong Soto mabuhay kayo okay okay yeah. Okay, handa na po ninyo. Ilabas na po yung mga dancing, yung mga pagpapit po ninyo na pangsayaw at talaga pong napakarami natin mga agencies sa ating community sa Melbourne po. Ipapaaral sa inyo. Ito natin mga event na nakakakakay po. Okay, ayan. Dalawa. Tatlo. Apat. Ayan. Lagay po panahon natin siya, baka makalimutan natin ayan, ano rin po ito sa April ito early part of April. Okay, ang 14th anniversary ng Soriano Orodio Foundation, pamumuno ni BFF Nelda Orodio, Nelda Torres, post Valentine, kasi po yung Valentine nila nung last year hindi natuloy, kaya hindi po sila nakapag-Valentine itong nakaraang Valentine at medyo mahigpit pa, kaya ginawa pa nilang April na Valentine nila. At sa 14th anniversary nila, supposedly last year, hindi rin po sila nakapagdao, so sabay-sabay na po ito. Ano naman po ito? Ilan pa ito? April, Sabado po ito, Sabado, bago maglinggo nung kay Yorme Esco tumago to Melbourne team lunch. Sabado naman po itong kay Nelda Torres Group, Soriano Orodio Foundation. Okay. Ayan, so ibig sabihin talagang punong-puno po na ng schedule at ang appointment ng ating barangay. At of course, nandyan din po yung emergency relief fund ni Kabalin Roy Arbungco. Naku, at ito maliit po ang kanilang ticket. Ibang klase yung ticket nila. So, sobrang payat. Hindi mapasok tuloy. Ayan. Okay, hindi nila makuha magpapayat. Kaya yung ticket na lang po nila ginawa nilang payat. Anyway, basahin po natin yan. At ang detalye ay para po yan sa April 23 pala yan. April 23 po. 6:30 p.m. Diyan naman po sa Temple Field. Okay. More details po. Alam nyo na kung saan makikita si Mr. Roy Carbunco. Ito yung International Costume Night. Ayan, sa pangunguna ni Roy. Okay, yung kanya pong costume ay talagang international po. Hindi malaman kung anong nationality. Kaya international costume. Okay. Ayan, so papagawa din tayo ng barong na multicolor. Kasi nakasuit siya parati ng nakasuit ng multicolored. So, barong Tagalog naman na multicolored. Ayan, okay. Okay, so yan po. Napakadami talaga nung activities. Pagkatapos niya ay dumako naman po tayo sa Bendigo. Okay, naku. Bendigo naman po ay sa April 30 naman po yan, okay? At April 30, ayan, meron naman silang Fall in Love fundraising event, April 30, sa Kennington Tavern in Kennington in Bendigo. Mas mura-mura po ito, 80 lang, ano lang po sila, 80 per person. Yun nga lang, ang petrol papuntang Bendigo ay abutin kayo siguro mga 100. Ayun, ayan. Okay, so anyway, talaga pong kung may gusto ay may paraan. At kung ayaw naman, may dahilan. Okay, ayan. Pero huwag kang mag-alala dyan. Huwag kang mag-alala, Maria and Cora Puentes Manic. Darating tayo dyan. Alright, okay. Okay. Ayan po mga pinag-pinag ko. Medyo supportahan natin ang mga pinag-pinag ko. Ayan. Ito lang yan. Give and take lang yan. Give and take. Dahil sila po may lumalabas din na Melbourne para lang maahan tayo. Okay, samantala ay dumako tayo sa mga balita naman sa ibang bansa. Okay, sa Belgium. Okay, despite of the geopolitical trouble sa Belgium, sa Eastern Europe, kagaya nga po ng paglusob ng Russia sa Ukraine, itong Belgium naman po ay mukhang may insidente naman ng terrorist activity. Naku, ano ba yan? Okay. Isang anim ang namatay dahil pagkatapos ng isang sasakyan ay inararo ang mga nakatayo na crowd sa Belgium. So, parang ano ito po, para yung meron pong marka o mga palatandaan ang tinatawag nating mga lone wolf uh, terrorist attack. Ayan. So, kailangan po mapagilan yan. So, anim po ang samampalad ay binawian ng buhay na biktima nung pag-atake na yon.
In Belgium, at least 6 people have been killed and several dozens injured after a car drove at high speed into a crowd. People had gathered for early morning carnival celebrations in Strepy-Brachny, a small town south of Brussels. Media reports said the crash may have been caused as the vehicle was being chased by police. Our Brussels correspondent Marina Strauss joins us now. Marina, what more do you know?
There's a press conference ongoing at this point of time, so we're still learning what happened there, what caused this tragic catastrophe here in Belgium, a bit south of Brussels in a very small town. We know that at least six people have died, that 10 are seriously injured and have been brought to a hospital, and that 27 more are also injured and are in some danger. So the mayor of this small town just spoke and said that this morning at 5 o'clock about 150 to 200 people gathered, and they traditionally celebrate Carnival from the early morning, though they go from house to house together and then have this traditional Carnival celebration. And then a car crashed into this group of people. It's not clear yet how it happened. It's still being investigated. But of course, we have condolences coming in, for example, from the Belgian Prime Minister, who will also travel there this afternoon at 4 o'clock. And he said that this is horrible news. He just got also the Interior Minister of Belgium said that this is a horrible incident and a catastrophe for Belgium, and that her thoughts are with the families of those who have died.
Did the mayor say anything about the reasons why the car drove into the crowd?
At the press conference, the mayor spoke and then a doctor spoke, and he gave some indications on the two people who caused this incident. Apparently it was 2 people in a car, 2 men, one born in 89, one born in 90, so about 30 years old, and they're both from the region. And there are automobile experts now on the case, and the 2 persons that have been taken in by the police will now be questioned, but no further information has been given at this point.
Marina Strauss for us in Brussels. Thanks for the update.
Okay, ayan po. Hindi pa ho nila masyadong binibigay ang detalye para naman na maproteksyonan ang rights nung dalawang tao. So, hindi pa ho natin talaga alam kung yun ay terrorist attack o talagang purely accident. Naku, ayan, ano ba naman yan? Ayan, yun ay siguradong pong terrorist attack yun kung nambaril po. Okay. Ayan. Ngayon, ng mga yung digmaan po sa Ukraine, kung saan diluso po ng Russia ang Ukraine ay mag-3 linggo na po. Pagka-3 linggo na, pangatlong linggo na itong linggo na ito. Subalit po bigla pong natabunan niya ng balita nung na isang kahindik-hindik na pangyayari, ang pagbagsak po ng isang Eastern Airlines sa China na domestic airline po yon na naglalaman ng mahigit na 100 o 130 plus na katao exactly. At kitang-kita po sa video kung papaano bumulusok mula sa langit ang pagbagsak ng eroplano. Usually po ang pagbagsak ng eroplano medyo nag-glide pa ho siya bago tumama sa bundok o kaya naalalayan pa ng piloto. Pero ito pong eroplanong ito talagang kumbagang talagang bumubulusok na galing sa langit papagsak ng lupa. Ay, nakakatakot po. Kaya yun po yung mga pasakay na ng eroplano ng araw na yun mukhang bigla pong nag-cancel ng kanilang flight. Takot. Pero sabi nga naman daw nila, ang aksidente po sa eroplano is very very remote po na mangyari sa lahat ng tao. Okay? Ibig niya sabihin mas malamang pa daw ho na aksidente tayo sa sasakyan, vehicular accident, kaysa sa maaksidente po tayo sa eroplano. Okay. So, yun po ang halimbawa na upang wag matakot ang mga tao. Ayan. Ito po ang usapan po nila sa apparently nakita na po yung black box. Okay? Subalit wala pa hong findings.
Chinese investigators have found one of the two black boxes belonging to the China Eastern Plain that crashed on Monday. According to the lead investigator, the box was badly damaged and it's unclear at this stage if this is the box that contains the flight data or audio recordings. Meanwhile, bad weather has hampered the work of emergency crew at the crash site. Operations came to a stop this morning after officials warned that heavy rain increases the risk of landslides in the mountainous area. The wet weather is expected to continue for the rest of the week. Also today, relatives of those on board were seen arriving at the village nearest to the crash site. The plane carrying 123 passengers and 9 crew was en route from Kunming to Guangzhou when it suddenly plunged from cruising altitude and crashed. China correspondent Elizabeth Law is near the crash site and sent us this update.
Now we're here at the border between Guangdong and Guangxi. As you can see, it's raining very heavily, and this is exactly the same as what it is in Singapore after it's been raining for about 5 days. So it's wet, it's miserable. And also, what we've understand now from Chinese media is that families have been moved towards Teng County, where they are closer to the crash sites. But we don't have actually sight of them because authorities have increased the cordon area and media have very, very little access towards the family members, and reasonably, of course, to give them space in what has happened. Authorities have not used the words completely perish or fatalities yet, but it is them not using the words that have actually also been very telling. I suppose this is because we are still in the important 72-hour period immediately following a crash, which is why they don't want to prematurely declare anything. That's number one. But I think from what we've heard from officials, and also yesterday at the Foreign Ministry briefing, spokesman Wang Wen wore a completely black tie, which actually gives us an indication of what has happened.
Ayan po. So, ibig sabihin ay yung the next 22 hours o 3 days pagkatapos po ng aksidente o insidente ay hindi pa ho maaring magbigay ng maski po speculation. Hindi po tayo pwede mag-speculate dahil inimbestigahan po ng mga otoridad ang pangyayari at nakakatakot po ang nangyari. So, tignan po natin ang another video. At kanila pong ito naman ay hindi po ito video na gawa po dito sa Asia. I think this is another video at talaga pong meron po silang mga theory kung bakit nag-crash po itong eroplanong ito.
Family members have arrived in southern China following the terrifying crash of a China Eastern Airlines plane. Investigators are now searching for the black box flight recorders as loved ones are desperate for answers after a plane came down. The Boeing 737 plummeted from the sky and crashed into a mountain during a domestic flight in the country's south. 132 people were on board. Jeffrey Thomas is aviation editor at the West Australian. Morning to you. Do we know anything more about the cause? What are the different theories?
No, we don't know anything positive about what happened. Some theories are emerging. The major one is there was a catastrophic failure of the structure of the aeroplane, possibly related to the tail area. There are some suggestions that the tail of the vertical stabiliser of the aircraft came away. Why that happened, we don't know. It could relate to the aft pressure bulkhead, the back of the aeroplane, possibly a corrosion problem. There's also suggestion of a possible bomb and also possible pilot human factors related to the pilot, but the main one relates to the an explosion at the rear of the aircraft that took the tail away.
Right, so that's quite a wide variety of possibilities. Have there been many other crashes like this where the plane plummets so directly?
Look, there have been ones that come to mind of the German Wings pilot suicide. Egypt Air 767 also, and also the Silk Air pilot suicide. There's several, and we've sadly had other ones where the tail has come away, one because of an aft pressure bulkhead failure. So yes, there are precedents for what has happened, but until we get these black boxes, we just simply are not going to know the fine detail.
Yeah, so in this case, obviously no survivors. The wreckage would be, I imagine, in tiny bits. How hard is it to locate those black box flight recorders? And are they always all intact?
Typically, yes, first of all, it's going to be hard to find them. And typically they do survive. They in the case of the German Wings aircraft, they survived. And the Silk Air one, it also survived. So yes, these black boxes are incredibly sturdy and have survived some horrendous crashes over the years. So there's a high level of confidence that it will be located. It may take a few more days, and when it is located, it will be able to be transcribed.
Look, we all fly Boeing, and this was a Boeing, a very popular plane right around the world. What does this do for that brand, and what does it do for confidence of people flying?
Look, from the public perspective, yes, it gives a black eye to Boeing. There's no question about that, particularly after the two MAX tragedies going back a few years now. But the 737-800 is the workhorse of the world. We have about 180 to 200 in Australia. They fly about 4 or 5 sectors a day. They've given our airlines flawless performance. It is the most reliable aeroplane in the world. So I do not believe for 1 minute that this is a 737-800 problem. I believe the fault lies elsewhere, and I think travellers should have every confidence in getting onto a 737-800, as I will do next week when I fly to Sydney. So I have no qualms about it whatsoever.
Okay, we thank you for your expertise, Jeff.
Para medyo naman ay maagapan po inyong pag-aalinlangan o pagkatakot po yun doon sa mga babiyahe po sa eroplano at ang masasakyan po ninyo ay another Boeing plane. Hindi naman po lahat po ng Boeing planes ay apektado ng ganyan. At hindi pa ho natin alam ang dahilan talaga nung pangyayari na yun sa China Eastern Airline, kung ano po talaga nangyari. Hanggang ngayon po wala pong ano. At itong expert na galing sa WA, pupunta po sa Sydney, alam niya na ang sasakyan po niya ay isang Boeing Boeing 727 na domestic flight. Okay. Ayan. Okay, so ang eksperto po ay may tiwala na sumakay pa sa Boeing, tayo po mga pangkaraniwang civilian at tao, huwag na tayong matakot. Kagaya ng sinabi sa inyo, mas malamang na maaksidente pa tayo sa sasakyan na panlupa kaysa sa maaksidente kayo sa sasakyang panghimpapawid. Okay, yan po. Okay, ito naman ang tutukan naman natin ay sa Amerika naman po. Ito po talagang ito ay wala pong hindi niya po pwedeng masisi ito dahil ito ay kalikasan. This is Mother Nature na talaga pong nananalasa sa kalagitnaang bahagi ng Amerika, Texas at saka Nevada po ito. Kung saan talagang makikita niyo talaga ang lakas ng tawag dito, kalikasan, ang buhawi. Ayan, mas malakas pa ho yan kaysa sa tawag dito, sa mga nararanasan nating mga bagyo sa Pilipinas. Kasi ang bagyo po ay ano lang, isang direksyon lang. Samantala itong ipo-ipo, itong buhawi, talaga pong umiikot yan at talaga pong hinahablot maski puno.
In the United States, Texas has been slammed by more than a dozen powerful tornadoes. At least one person killed, many injured, and countless homes have been destroyed. And there are In the United States, Texas has been slammed by more than a dozen powerful tornadoes. At least one person killed, many injured, and countless homes have been destroyed. And there are fears the state remains in the firing line, with more giant twisters predicted to hit.
A pickup truck in the belly of the beast spun out on its side. The vehicle tossed back up onto its wheels and driving away as the Lone Star State was barraged by at least a dozen tornadoes, winds whipping up to 240 kilometres an hour. In Round Rock, north of Austin, roofs were sheared off homes, trees ripped out of the ground. In town, it hit restaurants and the local bank. In the direct path of another twister, 500 students, staff and parents forced to shelter inside Jacksborough Elementary School. Its roof ripped off, a wall collapsed and the gymnasium destroyed. Incredibly, no one was injured.
It's just a miracle and
But many were left homeless.
Twister 2, that's exactly what it was like.
The governor crediting local TV stations for saving lives.
This is a confirmed tornado on the ground. You need to be in your shelter right now.
Meteorologists acting as effective early warning systems.
To see if that lowers and becomes a tornado.
That same storm system now drifting east.
Okay, folks, get to your safe place.
Multiple powerful tornadoes sweeping through New Orleans city centre this evening, destroying homes, bringing down power lines, with peak tornado season still a month away.
Dude, that's a giant tornado.
In the United States, Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
Ano niya, talagang hindi lang po iisa pa lang tornado ang dumaan, kundi 12. Can you imagine that? 12 umiikot na hangin ang dumadaan. Pag nadaanan po yung bahay niyo, siguradong hahablutin po dahil punong kahoy nga po hinahablot ng tornado. So, kumbaga yung mga nararanasan po natin sa Pilipinas na mga bagyo ay kumbaga ihahambing natin sa tornado. Hindi naman sa sinasabing na maliit natin at usually po sa atin sa Pilipinas pagka yung mga light materials po ang mga bahay, ayun po ang medyo na-damage. Pero pagka ang bahay naman po natin ay bahay na bato sa Pilipinas at maganda po ang pagka-angkor ng bubong kumbaga na tawag dito ay na tumatibay naman, nakakalaban naman po sa mga bagyo kagaya nung Typhoon Odette. May mga bahay din po namang nag-survive dahil po sa lakas no kahit na malakas po yung Typhoon Odette. Samantalang sa tornado po, nakita po naman ninyo talagang mga public school building talaga pong winasak at pati yung dingding ng dingding kung nakita po ninyo, dingding po ng na konkreto ng school building ay gumuho dahil po sa tornado po. So gano'n po kalakas talaga ang tornado, okey. Ayan. Okey, ngayon naman pa tunghayan natin ang balitang pampulitika naman sa atin sa Pilipinas. Okey, talagang ayan bago po 'yan ay dapat, atin po munang pakiusap, ipakilala sa ating mga kabarangay na, yun pong, yun po, yung pong ating, eleksyon pambansang eleksyon ay hindi po dapat maging sanhi ng ating, awayan, maski po tayo magkakaibigan, hindi po tayo dapat mag-awayan dahil lang sa eleksyon. Sabi nga nila, yung boto mo ay boto mo, ang boto ko ay boto ko. Okay, so, ayan po ang ating ipaparating na mensahe sa ating mga Dabarkads.
Si Pedro at Badong magkaibigan, inuumaga sa pag-iinuman. Isang araw nagulat ang taong bayan dahil sila'y di na nagkikibuan. Boto ko to, boto mo yan, ha? Kanya-kanya tayo ng kursunada. Sana ay irespeto ang isa't isa. Huwag sanang masira ang pagsasama, pati ang relasyon sa pamilya nasisira dahil sa politika. Magkakamag-anak ay nag-aaway na dahil sa boto na magkakaiba. Boto ko to, boto mo yan, ha? Kanya-kanya tayo ng kursunada. Sana ay irespeto ang isa't isa. Huwag sanang masira ang pagsasama. Warat ang pinagsamahan, pati kandila ay nagkasulian. Pagkakaibigan isinakripisyo dahil lamang sa mga kandidato. Si Pedro at Badong magkaibigan, inuumaga sa pag-iinuman. Isang araw nagulat ang taong bayan dahil sila'y di na nagkikibuan. Boto ko to, boto mo yan, ha? Kanya-kanya tayo ng kursunada. Sana ay irespeto ang isa't isa. Huwag sanang masira ang pagsasama. Warat ang pinagsamahan, pati kandila ay nagkasulian. Pagkakaibigan isinakripisyo dahil lamang sa mga kandidato. Boto ko to, boto mo yan, ha? Kanya-kanya tayo ng kursunada. Sana ay irespeto ang isa't isa. Huwag sanang masira ang pagsasama, pati ang relasyon sa pamilya nasisira dahil sa politika. Magkakamag-anak ay nag-aaway na dahil sa boto na magkakaiba. Boto ko to, boto mo yan, ha? Kanya-kanya tayo ng kursunada. Sana ay irespeto ang isa't isa. Huwag sanang masira ang pagsasama.
Okay, yan po ang ating paalala sa ating mga kabarangay at saka mga Pinoy at Dabarkads. Lalong-lalo na po yung mga boboto po. Yung mga hindi po boboto, maski po dual citizen kayo, kung hindi po kayo nagparehistro, Huwag kayo masyadong mainit sa pagsusuporta ng kandidato nyo dahil hindi naman pala kayo boboto. Huwag kayo masyadong mainit kung sino po ang gusto nyong manalo. Paubayan nyo po diyan doon sa mga nabigyan ng karapatan na pumili ng susunod na mga pinuno ng Pilipinas. Okay? Ayon nga kay Tokayo Freddy Aguilar, ang susunod na Pangulo ng Pilipinas ay kailangan po piliin nating mabuti dahil napakalaki po ng kanyang magiging responsibilidad. Okay, pakinggan po natin si Kap Freddy Aguilar.
2022.
Bagsak ang ekonomiya ng bayan kong sinta. Milyon ang walang trabaho dahil sa COVID-19. Idagdag mo pang West Philippine Sea, mga bagyong magtitindi, kawawa ang bayan, kawawa si Juan. Mabigat ang problema ng susunod na Pangulo, kaya piliin nyo dapat ay may talino. May kakayahan siyang mamuno, usilak ang kanyang puso para sa inang bayan. Inang presidente ko'y may utak, may paninindigan. Siya ay tunay na leader, may bayad at matapang, may prinsipyo, may puso at damdamin sa tao.
Payo ni Kap Freddy Aguilar. Okay. So tungayan po natin ang mga balita pong pang-eleksyon galing sa Pilipinas. Okay, ito po ang mga latest dyan. Ito pong bulong-bulungan na magtatambal daw si ang pink at saka green. Nako, at para maging kulay rosas, pink at saka green at rosas team ay tinanggi po agad ni Inday Sara Duterte.
I intend to honor the commitment of my parties, the Lakas Christian Muslim Democrats, and Hugpong ng Pagbabago. That is to support Bongbong Marcos as President.
Nanindigan si Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio na mananatiling katandem niya si presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Ito ang kanyang sagot sa mga nagsusulong ng Leni Robredo Duterte Tandem o tinawag na Rosa Movement. Mismong ang malapit na kaibigan ni Mayor Sara Duterte na si Albay 2nd District Representative Joey Salceda kasama si Cagayan de Oro City 2nd District Representative Rufus Rodriguez ang nag-endorso ng Rosa Tandem. Ayon kay Salceda, ang dalawa ay kapwa obsessed with results o nais lagi na magkaroon ng resulta ang kanilang ginagawa na ayon sa mambabatas ay magandang katangian para mapabuti ang bansa. Giit ni Mayor Sara, kailangan pa rin niyang pahalagahan ang kanyang naging commitment.
Let me reiterate that I am aware that many of you wish to see me with another presidential candidate. I take that as a sign of confidence in me as a leader. And for that, I am truly, deeply touched and honored. But I am a person, a woman, a leader who values commitment and word of honor.
Nasa probinsya ng Quezon ngayon, sina Marcos Jr. at Duterte. Nangampanya sila sa munisipalidad ng Chaong at sa Lucena City. Sa Quezon Convention Center naman, ginanap ang Grand Campaign Rally ng Uniteam. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, Diyos ang amin sa...
Yan po, malinaw na malinaw. Ha? Yung mga... Ito kasi problema itong mga ating mga power broker na mga tarapo. Kung gusto pa nila tatambalin yung mga imposible na magkakatambal. Ano ba naman yan? Tumigil na kayo at hayaan nyo na lang ang mga botante na Pilipinos. Nakalansyado na yan ng pagpipilian. Ha? Lima yung pagpipilian. Ha? Basically, 5 pagpipilian. Of course, former Vice President Leni Robredo at saka si Kiko Pangilinan. Of course, okay. Of course, pagkatapos close contender po yan ay si Unity Team ni Bongbong Marcos at saka ni Inday Sara Duterte, okay? And then coming in very closely sa kanila ay of course si former Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso at si Doc Willie Ong, ayan. Of course, pagkatapos dyan sumusunod din yung si former Senator Pantilo Lacson at saka si Senate President Tito Soto. Okay, ayan. So magandang tambalan din po yan. And of course, sana pinaka talaga pong tunay na magandang tambalan na makatao of course yung kamao ng bayan. Kamao ng bayan si Pacman Manny Pacquiao at saka si former Mayor Manila Lito Atienza. Okay, yan po ang pinakamaganda. Ideal po talaga yan kung talagang tutuusin. Okay. Ayan, so 5 po ang pagpipilian. So hayaan nyo na po na maganda po yan at smorgasbord po ang labas ng eleksyon natin. Siyempre, kaya nga po may direct election tayo dahil dyan. Okay, ang problema lang po natin ngayon ay ito pong lintik na smart problema ng COMELEC na tungkol po sa kanilang technology. Tingnan po natin kung ito po yung tungkol doon sa Smartmatic.
There indeed was a security breach in the Smartmatic operation. That appears to be clear. And while it is being investigated further by both the NBI, the CICC, the National Privacy Commission, and other groups, we have to admit that a very serious breach occurred.
Ito ang inihayag ni Senator Amy Marcos, chairperson ng Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, pagkatapos ng isang executive meeting kasama ang mga opisyal ng COMELEC noong isang linggo. Nagkaroon umano ng serious breach sa sistema ng Smartmatic na siyang system provider ng Commission on Elections na pinangangambahang makakaapekto sa nalalapit na halalan. Nag-ugat ang isyu ng pahintulutan umanong kopyahin ng isang empleyado ng Smartmatic ang mga datos sa kanyang laptop. Kaugnay nito ayon kay COMELEC Commissioner George Erwin Garcia, gumagawa na sila ng aksyon hinggil dito. Tinalakay nila ito sa unbanked session ngayong araw. Ngunit wala pang ibinigay na karagdagang detalye ang komisyon hinggil dito para hindi maapektuhan ang nagpapatuloy na investigasyon ng NBI. Dagdag pa ni Garcia, magbibigay sila ng direktiba sa ilang opisyal ng COMELEC at inaasahang maaksyonan ito hanggang March 29, 2022. Una nang sinabi ng COMELEC kung ano man ang kanilang napag-usapan sa executive session kasama si Senator Marcos ay gagawa nila ng karampatang aksyon. Samantalang una na ring pinabulaanan ng Smartmatic ang pahayag ni Senator Marcos. Hindi rin totoo na may nangyaring data breach.
The 2022 Philippine national and local elections are 100% safe and secure and remain unaffected despite the noise being generated by disinformation campaigns, non-verified sources, and even fabricated and manipulated information.
Ang COMELEC naman inihayag na pagdating sa kanilang sistema, partikular sa vote counting machine, ay hindi ito basta-basta na ma-hack.
So the VCM transmits result in a split of seconds, or let us say 10 to 20 seconds, magta-transmit na ng result papuntang transparency server, papuntang data server, and backup. So tatlo po yung papunta. So there is no way that a hacker can manipulate the results during that period of seconds. Yung sinasabi nilang breach, it has nothing to do with the process of our election this coming May 9, 2022.
Samantala, hinihinga ng UNTV ng
Ay, sana nga naman po sana naman ay lamang magpatotoo ka, Commissioner Marlon Casquejo. Kung di, ito nga abutin mo. Okay, Ayan, so, okay, wag po tayo basta-basta maniniwala sa mga fake news, sa mga allegation po. Importante po ang ating sariling boto po, at ating let us cast our vote wisely. At of course, put our trust in the Commission on Election. Ayan. Ayan po. Okay, lumagpas po tayo sa ating oras at nakaisang oras na po tayo at ito lang po ang nais kong handog sa ating mga tita at mga tito na magsisidalo po sa mga party and dinner and everything sa mga susunod na buwan ng Abril, Mayo. Talaga pong napakabilis po ng panahon. Ngayon, yung pakita nyo, malapit na po matapos ang Marso. At by the way po, malapit na rin po matapos yung ating daylight saving time. At I think ito po hindi po itong Sabado na ito, sa katapusan po ng tawag dito ng March po ang katapusan ng daylight saving time. Okay, tinitingnan po natin to para mabigyan po ninyo ng advice sa inyo. Okay. Wala po rito. Nasa ako ba nakita kanina to? Anyway, ayun, April 3 po. April 3 ang Sunday. April 3 po ang tapusan ng daylight saving time. So, wag po kayong magtataka kung bakit pagkatapos po ng daylight saving time we gain 1 hour. Okay, baka naman mali yung pag-adjust nyo ng relo nyo at imbis na mag-gain kayo ng 1 hour, lalo pa kayo malugi ng 1 oras. Okay, yan. So, madali lang pong tandaan yan pagka po sa spring, i-forward po ng 1 oras. Yan. Yun yung doon po tayo sisimula yung daylight saving time. Pagka autumn o fall, you fall 1 hour backward. You fall backward. Ayan. Ibig sabihin, i-atras po ninyo yung relo ninyo. Halimbawa, alas 7 ng umaga, alas 6 pa lang po yan ng umaga. So, we gain 1 hour. Huwag niyo pong intindihin yung gain or lose 1 hour. Malilito po kayo. Basta, ang tandaan nyo lang, maganda niyan. Spring forward, fall backward. Ayan. Nagra-rhyme po yan. Yan ang turo sa atin ng mga chokaran natin, mga ka-OC natin. Spring forward, fall backward. Ayan. Okay. Ito po ulit si Chairman Fred na mamaalam sa inyo ngayong Huwebes ng gabi. Sa atin pong palatuntunang Barangay Family and Friends, the Global Filipino Show. At po ang pagito po itong kanta ng ating kaibigang Rene, the late Rene Alon Pusong Bato de la Rosa. Siya po ang kompositor nito at sumikat po itong kanta na ito. Hanggang sa muli po, hanggang sa linggo po. Ito po ang inyong Chairman Fred.